We are so excited to have you on today because we've been following your work for a while. We love all of your content. I'm sure you hear that all the time. And we're super excited because this is the perfect time to be having this conversation because so many of our community members are actually doing dry January. And we're going to talk all
Yes.
about, yeah, it's super exciting. And we're going to talk about your sobriety journey. But before we get into that, I want to talk about your social media presence and kind of how that came to be. Is this something that you always wanted to do, or did you just start to share and it snowballed? We'd love to hear about it.
So I actually, yes and no. Like, yes, I always wanted to be a creative. No, I didn't think that social media was going to be the way that I got there. I did my undergrad and my graduate in creative writing, and I actually have a book coming out in May. So that is what I've always wanted to do is write books. I did stand-up comedy in my like early 20s and did improv in LA and all of that. And it was more of like my creative outlet. But then as after having getting married and having babies and feeling a little bit of like a little lost in like this traditional wife mother role, I was like, how can I be creative again? I'm in Lamont, Illinois. I'm not in LA anymore. What can I do? And that's when I turned to social media because I was like, look, I need a creative outlet. I need to connect with other moms. Motherhood is lonely. And I just went on and started making a bunch of internet friends. And now that friend group has grown a lot.
I love that. And when was that, Jyoti? Was it 2020? Because I came across you like in the thick of COVID. I'm like, who is this woman? She is funny.
2020 is when I hit 1,000 followers. So yeah, around then is when it really started kind of taking off. I felt like 1,000 was a huge milestone for me because it took me forever. It took me 2 years to get there, right? Of just sharing consistently. And so yeah, it was so much fun. I think it's been a fun journey. It's been, and I've evolved. My page has evolved so much. So for the people like you who've been there for so long, like thank you for sticking around.
Oh, it's the best. And I know this podcast isn't about content. I feel like we're all so passionate about it. Maybe we do another one, but I love hearing how you said, even you hitting 1,000 and now you have like over 100,000, subscribers and a massive community. What was your cadence for doing content? Were you doing it daily? Like, I'd love to hear because sometimes people wonder, like, why haven't I got that growth? And it actually takes quite a bit of time, quite a bit of consistency. So I'd love to just kind of
Yeah.
understand what that looked like for you in the early days.
The thing for me in the early days was to show up every day no matter what. And for that was in my stories. I wasn't much of a grid poster in the beginning. I did post on my grid here and there, but it was just family stuff really. It was me showing up in my stories and talking to my audience face to camera. Like, hey guys, good morning. Oh my God. Like showing them the realities of motherhood in my home helped other moms feel like, oh, okay, I'm not crazy. Like my kids are also just as insane. Everything in my house is just as messy. And that was really how I built that like connection in that community was just truly just sharing my day to day with these kids, especially during COVID when everyone was at home going stir crazy. And I was sitting here with two under two. I had two toddlers at home by myself. And I was like, oh, geez. Like, you know? And so I just shared and then I started diving into more funny videos and TikTok style videos and then Reels hit. And I was like, that's it. Like, and that's where the growth really came from was starting to connect with my audience through Reels and comedy and real motherhood.
I forgot there was a time when there was no reels. You're right. I'm like, we used to not have video and reels. But what I appreciate about you, even from when I first met you, even outside of beeya, when I was following you, you are very vocal and vulnerable. And, a big part of something you've been talking about over, maybe the past few years now is your sobriety journey. Kaya mentioned a lot of our communities doing dry Jan. It's top of mind for a lot of people, a topic we're passionate about. So I'd love to maybe hear, how has your relationship with alcohol kind of shifted over the years? I know that's
Oh
probably
my
a big
God,
question.
that's a huge
I
question.
know.
Like a book. Okay. I will say that just to start off, dry January is the reason I'm dry now 4 years later. So I started by doing dry January. I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a break for a month because truthfully, I needed to prove to myself that I could take a break for a month, right? Because I was like, if I don't drink, if I can not drink for a month, then I probably don't have a drinking problem, right? Because I drink like a lot of other people drink. I drank like my friends drank. I had a nightcap. I had wine on the weekends. I drank socially. I wasn't waking up with like a brown bag and an alcohol bottle. Like it wasn't what I, would assume is alcoholism. But I felt a lot of the feelings of what it may have felt like to be an alcoholic, right? Like I was drowsy. I had anxiety. Um, a difficult time recollecting pieces of my night on those those benders, and I was tired. Alcohol was exhausting me, and that's not something I knew in the beginning until the weight was lifted. Just the weight of it in my life, once it was lifted, I was like, oh shit, I didn't realize how much energy I was putting into that. Into like, should I drink tonight? Should I not drink tonight? Oh, should I finish that bottle of wine that I opened? I don't even want to drink it, but I already opened it and it's a really good bottle. So let me just pour that. Oh, should I have one more? Did I do 5 ounces or 8 ounces? Like there's just so many little things that go to that. Or the worst one, I'm not gonna drink tonight, and then you end up drinking. And then the next day's ruined. And all in all, was not making me the best parent I could possibly be or the best person. And so eliminating alcohol from my life was a huge inciting incident for the trajectory of my career. I can't even, the sober productivity is real. You get sober and all of a sudden you're productive as hell. Like it's crazy. So when I first became sober in January for dry January, I had not shared it with anybody. I didn't really like announce it. I was very hesitant to like put it out there because if I put it out there, then it was real and I had to stick to it and I had to be accountable. So I waited actually 3 months. I think I shared for the first time that I was sober in April of
What year
2021.
was this? 2021.
2021. I shared in April and I had put out the statement, I am never going back. And that's huge, right? Because in a society that glamorizes alcohol, all my friends drink. Like, I'm going to say now, like, as the girl who was the party girl, like, I'm not going to do it anymore. So I took that step and since then have inspired several handfuls of people, I'm sure more, but at least the ones that have told me to go completely dry. And did you guys hear what the Surgeon General said? That happened 2 days ago. I mean, I'm not sure in the timing of this podcast, but 2 days from this day today, he said that alcohol bottles should have a cancer warning label just like cigarettes. Like, that's amazing. We're getting there, guys. We're getting there.
Yeah. Wow, I feel like I have so much that I want to talk to you about with this, but let's like take a step back before 2021. I know growing up, in the South Asian community that alcohol is a big part of like weddings, going out, college experience, all of that. And so it informed a lot of my college experience for sure. Take us back to like when did you start drinking and when did it become, something that was happening more frequently?
Yeah, I had my first sip of alcohol at 14 years old at a high school party. It was a Smirnoff Ice, and I was hoisted off of it. Let me tell you. It was initially a way to fit in. Um, I wasn't the coolest kid in school. I was pretty nerdy, but my one of my best friends was really cool, and everyone else was doing it. So I was like, you know what? This is cool. So I'm gonna do it. My brothers didn't drink. They were like goody two shoes at that time in that way. And so for me, I was like, I don't want to be like them. I want to be cool. And so to me, it was automatic. Alcohol equals cool. And then throughout high school, like high school parties, like the alcohol got harder. The drinking became more frequent, just in terms of like parties and high school parties. As you get older, you have access to people who drive, and we didn't have Ubers, guys. We made poor decisions. Then it became senior year where like a bunch of my friends and I were actually drinking on campus. Like we were drinking at school. I mean, alcohol was that easy to get for us. I had a fake ID by the time I was 15. I went to my first club and had a Cosmopolitan at the age of 15. Like all these things happened at an age right now. If I look at a 15-year-old, I'd go, that's insane
Yeah.
that you're in a club because it's just so unsafe. But I did continue that through college. And you can imagine with how the Indian circle raged in college, where I stood with that. Um, and it continued. And then I left college and it continued, right? The weekends, raging, partying, a glass of wine with dinner. Oh, a glass of, you know, a martini with dinner. Like it was a constant part of my life. And I always say I was married to it. That was the longest relationship I've ever had is with alcohol because 14 to 32, which is a really long time. Then motherhood came and it was like a whole new branch of drinking. It was mommy wine culture that really sucked me in because I was like, oh, I'm good at this. Like I can do this. I can take, the drink on while we're trick or treating, and I can do the glass of wine at the park hidden in a tumbler. And there were just so many play dates with champagne and orange juice, mimosas, barely any orange juice and any mimosas. And so you just like, it's just it becomes this constant cycle of motherhood is hard. I'm going to have a drink because they're in bed and I deserve it. I'm going to pass out really quickly but sleep poorly, wake up with anxiety, and not be the best mom I could possibly be because I'm like not my best, right? Like alcohol did not sit well with me. And so it became this like endless cycle. And during this time, you guys will laugh at this. I was on a health journey.
Yeah,
You
you're
know,
right.
I was
Which
like,
is common. You hear that
Yeah.
quite
yeah,
commonly.
during this time, I'm drinking, I'm drinking, I'm drinking. And I'm like, I cannot use that toxic eyeliner or that toxic foundation because it is killing me as I sip my alcohol. Like, I look back and I'm like, wow, I was that blind to it, but it's not because I'm not informed or I'm not um, smart enough to figure out that alcohol is poison. It's because I didn't want to believe it, first of all, because I loved it. I was addicted to it. And society has really, really normalized the consumption of alcohol in unsafe amounts, you know?
Yeah, and I think that also what you're talking about, especially with the mommy culture, and what I can also relate to in past experiences, is this form of escapism. And so I want to talk about, is that what you also experienced? A lot of people went through 2020 drinking their way through it because of the pandemic and how painful that was. And so a
Yeah.
lot of people realized maybe after that, like, hey, I have a problem. I'm like sitting here in my home and there's this pandemic happening and I'm just drinking every day to escape reality. When you like maybe confronted that escapism, how did you deal with it, if that makes any sense? How did you kind of like say, okay, I'm going to confront what I'm feeling and I'm going to move past these uncomfortable feelings?
It was really uncomfortable. I will tell you that because nobody wants to sit there and go, I have a drinking problem, right? Like I did drink heavily during 2020, like a lot of people have. Zoom wine dates, like we're literally just sitting there drinking by ourselves, right? Um, and I will say my husband doesn't really drink. He is not a big drinker. He's the kind of person who like takes two sips of a beer and then wastes it, and then I'm the one who's like, why would you waste this gold? And then I'll like drink it all for him. Um, I I will say just realize I didn't realize it until I was at least 4 months into it. Like I into sobriety. I didn't want to admit that I actually had a problem until I was already sober for 4 months. Because I th- I think saying it out loud, being like, I had a drinking problem, I had an addiction and a dependency on alcohol, made me feel like I was put into a bucket that maybe isn't seen as because there's only media portrays alcoholism in one way. So when we see that, like I said, like brown paper bag and a homeless and you spend all your money and you wake up drunk, I didn't want to be put in that bucket. And it took me a while to realize that alcoholism, like many things, is a spectrum and we all fall in different places of it. And everyone's tolerance or where their rock bottom is completely different than the next person. I think I started realizing it when I realized how my parenting changed in sobriety, how my mornings were better. I was kinder. I wasn't as like agitated. I was just more playful and fun and just present. And I think I was like, what was I trying to escape? Myself? I think I was just trying to escape myself, right? Like in that when I was drinking in 2020, it wasn't my children that I wasn't drinking because them, even though that's what a lot of us say, right? In mommy wine culture, we're like, oh, the kids are like, I need a glass of wine with these kids. It was really just because I was so disappointed in myself that I kept drinking.
And I have a question around that. I feel like that your awareness was so strong, which you don't hear too often. Like people will stop for a month and they'll go back into it and they're like, I don't
Yeah.
have an alcohol problem. And, like you said, it's such a spectrum, to each their own. But I'm curious, you mentioned you realized that it was something about you. It wasn't your kids. It wasn't what was going on around you. Were there any other tools that you brought in when you stopped drinking alcohol, whether it was therapy? Like you mentioned, you're on a health journey. So I am curious to see how you manage that, because so many people wouldn't continue that path of sobriety without those extra tools.
So in June of 2019, I had quit alcohol for 1 month. Okay. And it was the hardest thing I ever did. And I immediately went back to it. Immediately. Because I was like, why did I do that? That's so stupid. I'm fine. I'm going to keep drinking. This time, what I did differently in January of 2021 is I started reading sober literature. I started listening to podcasts about sobriety, the health behind it, people who have done it. I started engaging in conversation with accounts, like sober accounts. It helped give me understanding of why I was doing what I was doing. And I think that when, in any case, when you don't have your why, you're going to lose focus, right? So in 2019, I didn't have a why. It was just like, oh, I don't want to drink because it makes me feel bad. And then in 2021, it was, oh, snaps. I'm reading Quit Like a Woman by Holly Whitaker. And alcohol's the new cigarettes. Why am I doing this to myself? I'm a self-aware person in general, right? Like I am someone who can easily be like, ooh, I'm not going to use bleach in my house when I learn. I'm like a know better, do better human. That's just who I am as a person. Am I perfect? No, I'm all about, trying my best. And sometimes that's 50% and sometimes it's 100%. So yeah, I think, did I even answer the question?
Yes, you definitely did.
Sometimes I
100%.
black out when I talk.
Yeah, and well, I read that book too. That book changed the way that I viewed everything. It was such an amazing book written. Quit Like a Woman. Holly, last name
Holly Whitaker.
Whitaker.
So Holly Whitaker started the Tempest. The Tempest was bought out by Monument. They're both recovery programs that are designed to be more universal than AA, because AA is so like male Christian based, and it still is. And that doesn't usually work for 50% of the population. So
I'd love to talk about how you navigate social situations now, because I am somebody who I don't drink anymore as well, except for the very, very, very rare occasion. But there are people in my life that I grew up with that was our primary form of connection. There are people, situations that I'm in that I feel it would be more comfortable to be drunk in this situation. And those are tough, especially with friendships or family members that are, these people are not going anywhere. They're part of your life. So,
yeah,
how do you personally navigate those situations?
I mean, it's really dependent. So I have the the one truth I will tell you is that when you make any evolution change, or once you evolve in your life, your friend circle may change, right? People may not, they might be triggered by your sobriety. They may think you're lame. She's
Hmm.
not fun anymore, whatever,
Yeah.
right? That's fine, because that person, that friendship served its purpose. You've grown past it, and that's okay, right? We're not going to have the same friends forever, or at least no beef, but like it doesn't have to be what it was, right? So if you have a friend that you only did, drunk book club with, and now they don't want to do book club with you anymore, like, cool, we'll do a different book club. Social situations in the beginning were really tough because I didn't know, should I bring my own non-alcoholic option? Is that weird? Is anybody going to have anything for me? Am I just going to be the person drinking water with lime everywhere? Like, it became kind of weird, especially when people are like taking shots and they're like, come on, let's take a shot. Come on. Come on. I was like, no, I've been sober for 6 months. Oh, okay. Yeah. Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Why are you doing that? You pregnant? And it's like, always, you pregnant? When you tell people in a group setting that's drinking that you're not drinking, it's almost like offensive to that group. And I can relate to that because when I was drinking, I was always offended if someone was like, no, I'm not going to drink, because I felt like, would you think you're better than us because you're not drinking? Like, I felt like I internalized it because I knew that what they were doing was probably the right thing, and then what I was doing was probably like gonna be regretful the next day. So going on social settings in the first year was hard, and but luckily, because it was still kind of COVIDy, we didn't, we didn't really go to many places, and so that was kind of nice. I'll be honest, it made it a lot easier to not have like a bunch of kids' birthday parties and all this stuff, and it allowed me to be home and just kind of reflect on that, like, why do we have alcohol at kids' birthday parties? Why why do we, take alcohol everywhere? Why are the parents trick or treating with alcohol right now? And like, it just helped me kind of see how much of it surrounded me in that time without fully like being immersed in it. And that was kind of nice. And I know a lot of people don't have that option now, but you could also just say no for a while until you're comfortable. And just be, just don't go. It's okay. If you really want to go, like, take a 6-pack of Heineken Zero with you. I mean, I have turned so many people onto Heineken Zero that drink regular alcohol, and they're like, this is actually really good. And I was like, yes, I know. Because you can make the alcohol stuff taste like alcohol without alcohol now. It's so crazy.
That relates so much to me. I mean, man, I've had my fair share of drinking too. When I was working in finance, living in New York, like if you didn't drink, you would completely stand out. And then it got to a point where I was drinking because of going out with clients or coworkers, like every single day. It's crazy. I look back, I'm like, how did I even perform and feel good? And it's crazy because to your point, and this is, a question I want to get into. You mentioned like when you stopped drinking, you felt so productive, and similar to you, I didn't realize this anxiousness that I felt every time the day after I would drink. I'm like, why do I feel anxious? I cut it out. I'm like, my God, I am a completely different person.
Yeah.
I'm so productive. But I do remember also it being tough when you go to social situations and you don't drink alcohol. And I got the same thing. You're so boring, Yasmin. What happened? I thought you loved good wine. And I'm just like, I'm taking a break, or I would maybe get, a water with a lime. And, sometimes I would lie like, oh, I just got like
vodka tonic,
a vodka something, to kind of stop. But what's so interesting, and you mentioned this, is like, as I still drink here and there. I don't definitely drink as much. It's probably been maybe 3 years I've been like that. But my friend group has definitely changed. I realized like, oh, I'm growing in a different way than those people that I used to hang out with and that I used to go out and they used to drink. I'm like, that actually isn't fun for me anymore. So I have noticed over the years, my friend group has changed. We were actually just at a friend's dinner for New Year's Eve. And, there was wine there, but most of us weren't drinking. And we're like, what? This is crazy. Like, this would not be the case a few years ago. I don't know, maybe because I'm in LA.
No, it is the case here too in Illinois. Like,
that's great.
I had a New Year's Eve party that was kid centric, and I provided no alcohol. One friend brought like a bottle of dessert wine, and some people tried it. But other than that, no one cared. I had friends bring non-alcoholic champagne to my house because they're like, they understand, oh, it's a kids party. Or like we went to dinner with like a girls' dinner, and only like one person had a drink, like out of the whole group. Because everyone was like, I just need hot water. I just want like, I was like, are we just all getting old, or are we just getting woke? Like, which one is it? But my mom will have like a margarita, and she's like 67, and she's like, oh, I'll have a marg. Like here and there, very, very rarely, but still, like, it's not, I don't think it's age. I think it's just like we have become a generation that goes based on how we feel. And we're like, this makes me feel bad. I'm not going to do it. Eating a bag of hot Cheetos before bed makes me feel like shit. So I'm not going to do it. So you got to choose your vices when you want to have them.
It's also so beautiful that you're sharing about this so publicly, because what I've also found is that being the first person to do it in a friend group, you slowly start to see this trickle effect of other people feeling like they want to try similar things. And then maybe even the people who you were drinking with before, all of a sudden you guys are all just not drinking together, which is really nice. And I'm sure you get to hear every single day from people through your platform of just how you sharing has helped them. Because like you said, your experience wasn't typical what you see on TV as an alcoholic. And it might help people understand, actually, maybe I do have a little bit of an issue with this. So, can you talk a little bit more
Right.
about how, are there ways that you've learned that people can kind of help themselves identify their relationship with alcohol?
Yeah, I think the first rule is if you even question if you have an issue with alcohol, you probably have an issue with alcohol. If it's a question in your mind, then that's something worth exploring because most people who don't drink, like my husband, for example, who had like 2 sips of beer once a month, who now switched that to Heineken Zero for some reason, he is not someone who would ever question if he had a bad relationship with alcohol because he's not someone who needs it. So that's all what I always tell people. If my content triggers you, if you're internalizing my sobriety, if you feel like, oh, is this me? Any part of it, then yes. Like that's the time you sit down and you go, hey, maybe I need to take a break. Maybe I need to walk away just so I can explore my relationship with alcohol. No one's saying that it's all or nothing. For me, it's all or nothing. That's me. That's my story and my journey. For Yasmin, it's once in a while, right? I have good friends who have changed their relationship with alcohol and now drink with intention. They're looking at it like, what is my reason for having a drink at this dinner? Is it because we're all celebrating, or is it because I'm stressed? Like, why am I reaching for a glass of, wine? Did I have a hard day? Am I using it as a coping mechanism? Or am I using it as, I really want to enjoy this really good glass of wine with this really good dinner, those little things matter. Intention. And I recently saw this video of this guy, and I wish I remembered his name, but I don't off the top of my head. But he was like, he lined up like 6 cans of Coke, and he was like, I'm gonna drink all of these, all 6 cans of Coke. And then he was like, wow. He's like, you guys are probably like, wow, he's crazy. He's gonna drink 6 cans of Coke. Now what happens when I do this? And he replaced each one with a can of beer. And he's like, not so crazy anymore, right? And it was so effective. I was like, right? It's like when they do the string cheese, they're like, would you eat 6 string cheeses? And then you're like, no. And they're like, would you eat 6 mozzarella sticks? It's like, yeah, I would.
Oh my gosh. You know what I'm curious about, and Kaya, I'm curious to get your thoughts too, and Jyoti. Like, I feel like, at least for me, I would drink in social situations just to like give me what is the word?
Social lubricant.
Social lubricant, exactly. Like so much, even, up until like 3 years ago. And then even like for the first year when I would throw events or go to events, I felt like uncomfortable and it was strange not drinking. Like sometimes I would even get, go for a wine. So that took a while. And then it got a little bit easier. And I'm just curious because I was thinking for myself, like, how did I become comfortable in those situations? Because I know so many people who do drink in social situations. Like, it makes me feel a little bit more fun, more
Yeah.
relaxed. So
More
I'm curious for
extroverted.
both of you, more
Because you're like
extroverted, like,
social anxiety is real, right? Like no matter what, like I mean, it takes time to get used to being sober in a public setting like that, like in a social setting. It doesn't happen overnight. You got to keep facing that challenge over and over again to become comfortable with it. And I have social anxiety. I still have social anxiety. I go to these like influencer events and I leave like
Yeah.
wondering what I said wrong. Like I'm like, oh, what did I do? Did I get canceled tonight? Because I do speak so freely and openly, and I do question sometimes when I meet people, like, do they like me? Do they not like me? But here's the thing, that's normal, and you're better. You're most likely going to make a better impression on people when you're sober than drunk. So you getting drunk and being like, oh my god, I was the life of the party. It's like that's not what people are saying.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I used alcohol as social lubricant. Pretty much, I had no interest actually in being in most of these places, but I was like, I'm here. I'm supposed to be here, even though who cares if I was there or not, looking back on it. And it's like, how can I make myself feel comfortable? Have a drink. And I think a lot about how I'm going to talk to my kids about this because I feel a lot of it was that I was just not okay being myself, or I didn't know how to be myself in those situations. And I think about like I want my kids to so fully be able to express themselves as they are so that they don't feel the need to change who they are with substances. So have you thought about that? Your kids are very young right now, but how will you talk to them as they get older?
Oh gosh. Okay. So they already know mommy doesn't drink alcohol, daddy doesn't drink alcohol. We don't have alcohol in the house. Alcohol is a drug and it causes cancer. They also know that red dye 40 is a drug and causes, cancer. And they know that sugar is a drug. And, we do have sugar in moderation in this house, but they're aware. It's their body, their choice. They're 6 and 7 right now. And the fact that they know all of that makes me really happy because open conversations are just so important. And I want to tie this into my upbringing. And my parents didn't drink alcohol. Well, they also never talked about it, right? So, like, they didn't drink it, but they didn't help my curiosity towards it. They didn't want to talk about it or they didn't know anything about it, right? They were busy. And the same thing came down to sex and sexuality. And I felt like alcohol and sexuality for me went hand in hand because I felt guilty and uncomfortable putting myself in sexual situations sober, right? So I did it drunk because that was easier. And it's all came back to the fact that I didn't have the parents to talk to me about it or to make me feel confident in my body or in my sexuality or let me know that it's totally normal to feel this way and it's actually very normal to have sex and feel, especially in your teenage years and all of that. And so I feel like with our kids, it's for us, it's open conversation, answering questions without judgment, allowing them to know that everything they're feeling is completely normal and teaching them safe ways to express themselves. Is it going to be perfect? I don't know. I'll let you know when I get there. We'll find out. It's all an experiment. Everybody knows parenting is like a massive
Oh,
experiment
yeah.
and nobody knows what they're doing, okay? No book is going to teach you.
My mom actually told me that she didn't even know what sex was when she got married. She didn't even know.
Yeah,
She
mine
had
too.
no idea. And then I feel like their generation, they didn't have the information, so they didn't have the tools. Our generation learned by being this
On the
huge
go.
experiment, right? Like we experienced it and then we learned, and then hopefully our children will reap some of the benefits of that.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
Sometimes I want people who wrote parenting books when their kids were small to do like a second part after their kids are adults, just to see how they ended up.
That's a good
You
idea.
know?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you wrote one in the 80s about raising your child like this. Can you tell me how your adult child is doing? I just want to know. Did it work out? Like,
The book will probably say, I have no freaking clue and, I'm still figuring it out.
yeah, I'm actually still working on this.
So, Jyoti, I'm so curious. I know you've been on your own health journey. You've taken out alcohol. You've done so many changes. What does self care look for you? What are some rituals that you've done that you're like, man, how did I live without these in the past? I'm just so curious.
It's crazy how much you have time for when you're not drinking. It's literally insane. Like, before you would put the kids to bed, you grab a glass of wine, you sit down, you scroll, you just hang, you drink your wine, you have your your snack. Now it's like read before bed. I've always read before bed, but if I was drinking too much, I couldn't because I wouldn't remember I wouldn't be engaged in my book. So now read before bed. I puzzle. I knit more. I do a lot more with my hands, like these little houses, like these little like projects. I'm gardening. The one thing I've gained in sobriety is a green thumb, which has been so exciting because my dad had that and I never felt like I did, and now I'm a plant lady. Look back there, you see all those? Okay, and then I feel like those are all my self care. My self care is just like these little moments of mindfulness. Like puzzling is so mindful because you can't do anything else when you do it. I love it. You can't do anything else when you're reading a book or when you're knitting. You really can't do too much else other than like watch a show. And so this ability to like not be scrolling and watching a movie or, that's my self care, putting my phone down.
Yeah. And I'm also curious, you are also, you're a mom of three. You are incredible online. You do so much content. You're writing multiple books. I'm sure stress is part of your life, right? We can't get around that, So before you would drink alcohol, that would be your thing. Is there anything that you go towards when you are feeling those anxious feelings and stress of just life, which so many of us can experience?
Yeah, actually, there's a lot of resources that I've been using. I have like apps that help me with mindfulness. So if I'm feeling super stressed, I do like a breathing exercise. It takes time to learn these coping skills. Exercise 3 times a week. It's amazing. It's free dopamine in my
Yeah,
basement.
so true.
I know, right? Or I play a game with the kids. That's always a good way when everyone's feeling like really wired and stressed. Like, someone's having a tantrum, he's teasing his sister, and I'm just like, oh my God, you guys are crazy. I'm like, hey guys, what if we just sit down and play one game of Uno? And everyone puts their rage into Uno. So that's a good way to get rid of stress. Um, Honestly, reading is like my favorite thing. I know I'm such a book nerd, but like, oh, just sitting in a corner with a hot cup of tea and reading, or my beeya magnesium cocktail, you know, and having like my tea or like my book, and it's just so cozy and it winds me down. Another thing I do every single day that brings me a lot of joy is gratitude journaling. I write down 3 things I'm grateful for every morning when I wake up.
When we were putting the questions together for this episode, I was thinking about something that came up for me a lot when I decided to take drinking out of my life was that I look back on all the experiences where I felt regret or regretted the way that I acted or what I said. And I was like, there's a link here. I was drinking when that happened. And that really helped me say, I don't ever want to show up with anything but integrity in my life. And if there's going to be something that takes that away, I don't want that a part of my life. And that kind of helped me really cut it out. And I feel like that's been helpful to kind of keep that going. But for anybody who's listening to this who is starting on their sobriety journey or is curious, they're sober curious, what would you say to them?
I would say to just try it, right? Just try it. Just try taking alcohol out of your life 1 month. And at the end of that month, if you're like, hey, look, I want to go back to it, cool. At the end of that month, if you're like, oh, apps, this is something, keep going with it. Keep going with what feels right. I mean, you're gonna be your mind and your intuition's gonna lead you in the right direction.
Yeah, I love that.
No, I was going to say, I love that, Jyoti. And maybe we can end on some of the new exciting projects that are out there for you. I know we just so appreciate you always sharing your stories, everything you're up to, and you're making such an impact. So we'd love to maybe hear about some of the things that are getting you excited that's coming up.
Oh my gosh, Yasmin, if I could tell you everything, I would, but you didn't sign an NDA.
I know.
Kidding. So my book, Fitting Indian, it's a young adult graphic novel that actually touches upon alcohol abuse and mental health of a South Asian teenage girl. It's coming out May 13th. I'm so excited. I already read the advance copy, and I'm just like, there's so much on the table for that. I'm really hoping that we can turn it into something more cinematic. And I have another book that I'm writing right now that is going to also be coming out in the next couple years. I'm also working on other projects that I can't even say, but
I
they're
love it.
amazing. I hate it that I can't say it, but they're coming. It's going to be a good year, you guys.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so exciting. And we love chatting with you. And we're so excited to get this episode out very soon for anybody who's trying dry January or is sober curious. This is going to be a really good tool for them. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
And thank you so much for having me. This was awesome, you guys. And I appreciate you guys spreading all this good information all the time.
Thank you, Jyoti. This was such a blast. So fun.